Welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you here. For hundreds of Nigerians arriving at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos this week, the journey home was not a vacation, a family visit, or a planned relocation. It was an escape, carrying little more than a few personal belongings and painful memories. Many of the returnees stepped onto Nigerian soil after leaving behind years of work, businesses, investments, and in some cases, even family members. Their stories paint a troubling picture of fear, intimidation, and growing hostility towards foreign nationals in South Africa, where renewed tensions have once again forced many Nigerians to abandon lives they spent years building. The first batch of 268 Nigerians arrived aboard a government-facilitated evacuation flight as part of a broader operation expected to bring hundreds more home. While there was visible relief among many of the returnees, there was also deep sadness. For some, returning home meant starting from scratch. For others, it meant leaving behind dreams that had taken years to build. What united many of them was a shared belief that remaining in South Africa had become increasingly dangerous. Among the returnees was mechanic and small business operator Rafiu Wasiu, who spent years trying to build a better future in South Africa before deciding he could no longer stay. Speaking shortly after arriving in Lagos, he described an environment in which foreigners increasingly felt unwanted and vulnerable. According to him, Nigerians and other African migrants became frequent targets of threats, harassment, and violent attacks. He said what began as occasional hostility gradually evolved into something much more serious, creating an atmosphere where many migrants lived in constant fear. According to Wasiu, attacks could happen without warning. He described situations in which migrants were approached on the streets, threatened, and robbed, often with little confidence that authorities will intervene. He alleged that criminals operated with boldness, knowing many foreigners felt powerless and lacked adequate protection. Even more troubling, he claimed that some migrants believe law enforcement agencies often fail to respond effectively when foreigners became victims of crime. Wasiu's allegation extended beyond criminal attacks. He also accused some police officers of exploiting migrants financially. According to him, foreigners were frequently stopped, questioned, and pressured into handing over money. He recalled an incident involving a friend who was allegedly detained and released only after a significant payment was made. Whether through criminal gangs or corrupt officials, many migrants felt trapped in a system where simply being a foreigner made them vulnerable. Yet, despite the hardship, Wasiu remains determined to move forward. He says he has no intention of returning to South Africa and plans to rebuild his life in Nigeria. For him, peace of mind now outweighs economic opportunity. He believes that no amount of financial success is worth living under constant fear of violence, intimidation, or discrimination. Another returnee, Millie Abu, shared a similar story of economic devastation. She explained that she operated a small retail business until authorities allegedly shut it down over documentation issues. According to her account, attempts to seek clarification led to confrontation rather than resolution. The closure of her business effectively ended her source of income and left her with little choice but to leave the country. Her experience highlights one of the major challenges facing many migrants: the sudden collapse of livelihoods that took years to establish. For others, even legal residence offered no protection. Lara Jacobs said she possessed valid permits and believed she was fully compliant with South African immigration requirements. However, when it came time to renew her documentation, she claimed she encountered resistance and hostility. According to her, migrants were increasingly told to return to their home countries, regardless of their legal status. She described an atmosphere where fear became part of daily life and where foreigners constantly worried about what might happen next. Jacobs' account reflects a broader concern among many returnees who argue that the issue extends beyond documentation or employment. According to them, hostility towards foreigners has become deeply embedded in some communities, fueled by economic frustration, unemployment, and social tensions. While South African authorities have repeatedly condemned xenophobic violence, many migrants say the reality on the ground often feels very different. Perhaps one of the most emotional stories came from Justin Okonkwo, whose return to Nigeria forced him to leave behind his wife and 2 children. Like many migrants, Okonkwo had built a small business selling clothing. However, he says authorities shut down the location where he operated, arguing that foreigners were taking opportunities away from South Africans. Okonkwo rejected that claim, insisting that many migrants simply created businesses and opportunities for themselves rather than competing for government jobs or formal employment positions. For Okonkwo, the decision to leave was not about business. It was about survival, faced with growing uncertainty and concerns for his safety. He chose to return home even though it meant separation from his family. The emotional cost of that decision remains difficult for him to accept, but he insists that preserving his life had to come first. He says he has no plans to return to South Africa. The experiences shared by these returnees have reignited discussions about xenophobia in South Africa, an issue that has periodically strained relations between African nations for years. Violent attacks targeting foreign nationals have repeatedly sparked diplomatic tensions, protests, and calls for stronger action. Critics argue that while unemployment, poverty, and inequality remain serious challenges, migrants are too often blamed for problems that have far more complex causes. In Nigeria, the latest wave of returnees has renewed calls for government action. Some political leaders have urged stronger diplomatic engagement with South African authorities, while others have called for measures aimed at protecting Nigerians abroad. So far, officials say discussions are ongoing, but many returnees believe more must be done to address the underlying causes of xenophobic violence and ensure that Africans living in other African countries can do so without fear. For the hundreds arriving home this week, however, the debate is no longer theoretical. Their businesses are gone. Their plans have been disrupted. Their life have been turned upside down. Many now face the difficult task of rebuilding from the ground up after leaving behind years of hard work and sacrifice. While they express gratitude for returning safely, they also carry painful memories of opportunities lost and dreams interrupted. As more Nigerians continue to arrive home, one question remains at the center of this unfolding story. Can African nations truly achieve unity and economic integration if millions of migrants continue to face hostility simply because they came from another African country? The answer may shape not only the future of migration on the continent, but also the broader vision of African solidarity that leaders have promoted for decades. Stay connected to FirstNet News for more in-depth reports, exclusive interviews, and stories that reveal the human realities behind the headlines shaping Africa today. I'm Chidera Iso. Bye for now.